Welcome again, everyone. I'm going to start with the overview of the product. Go through it quickly. So our focus has been always on usability, scalability, and connectivity. So our goal is to empower business users to manage their information assets by themselves. We try to help them by creating intuitive drag-and-drop user interface, make sure it is code-free development, and by giving single-click data preview, we help debugging and making testing easier of the solutions. Centerprise comes with high-performance parallel processing engine, 100% .NET managed code, and we have all three modes of operation, that is batch, change, or real-time. In terms of connectivity, we have support for all relational databases, all major OLTP and data warehousing solutions such as SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, MySQL, Sybase, Netezza, and Teradata. When it comes to files, we support all common file formats, be it fixed length, delimited, Excel, or even if it is hierarchical file, XML files, EDI, JSON, and any other custom hierarchical files. We have connectivity to web services using SOAP or REST, and we have connectivity to cloud applications such as Salesforce.com, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, QuickBooks, and a lot of social media platforms using our REST connector. So today we are going to talk about the best practices in designing and maintaining Centerprise solutions. Topics are divided into four, starting with design, where we'll be talking about designing and organizing solutions using projects. Then we'll talk about maintenance, that is managing team-based collaborative development. Then we'll go into reusability and look into how to ensure reusability of repeatable solutions. And then we'll go into analysis, where we'll look at lineage and impact analysis. Let's start with the very first topic, and that is the design. So when it comes to design, we recommend the old dictum of divide and conquer. If you have a solution area, make sure that you break it into smaller independent pieces. Keep going smaller till you hit the point where you have independent areas that can be turned into the independent projects. Limit the scope of a project to a specific area. We'll see some samples. When it comes to organizing, make sure you're using folders generously, name folders meaningfully. We recommend that you keep a common folder for reusable artifacts. And we also recommend that you keep documentation as a part of the folders. Let me jump into the product and look at how you can do all this. So starting with a very simple scenario where your solution is dealing with customer updates, order processing, products management, and shipping. So this is a hypothetical scenario of a company dealing with these four types of data integration tasks. So we would recommend that if you can see that these four tasks are completely independent of each other. So if you get to that point, separate these four areas into four separate projects. And that's what we have done in this case. Let's look at one of these projects, that is order processing, and that is open already here. And let's examine the way it is structured. So if you look at the project, it has four folders. One is meant for data cleansing, one is meant for moving orders between sources and destinations, and one folder is dedicated for orchestration, and one folder is for the shared artifacts. So if you look at the move orders, it has the data flows and any other files that are required for moving orders. We are keeping these text files as README, that is documentation. And if you look at this folder, shared folder, That's where we store all our reusable artifacts, be it as subflow, shared actions, or shared DB connections. So this is a recommended way of structuring and organizing your projects. Let's move back to the presentation. Now we'll be looking at the maintenance piece, and maintenance is about taking your solutions and organizing them and making sure that they're maintained properly. You're looking at the versioning, the history, code security, and so on and so forth. We recommend two different modes. The most recommended one is to use a source control. Centerprise comes with the built-in Team Foundation connectivity for the source control. And as a result, you get all the good features of source control, such as the code security, that is check-in and check-outs. You can do rollbacks if you want to go back to an older version. It comes with history monitoring. You can look at solutions history. You can do versioning without any effort. You can go back to any of the versions by the levels or by any date. And everyone is working with their own local copy, so that you can make a change in your local copy, and when you check in, if somebody else has made any other changes, you can do the conflict resolution as well. So this is the most recommended way. Second most recommended way would be to use a shared location or a network drive where you're working with a shared copy. You can do versioning by naming the artifacts, and you can do manual archiving and backing up of the data. We don't recommend using local copies unless you're using it in a single user mode where you don't have to share your artifacts with anyone else. Let's go ahead and have a look at this feature in the product. So any of the projects inside Centerprise, once they are created, you can connect them to source control. So first you connect to your source control. It is already connected. And once it is connected, you can add the project to the source control. And once it is added, you will see these icons next to the artifacts. You can see here the check mark and the lock and other signs. So lock shows that it is checked in. Check sign is showing that it is checked out. Plus signs shows that it has just been added and has not been checked in, and so on and so forth. If you do right click on any of these items, you can go to the source control menu and you can look at the options available, where you can get the latest version. You can get any specific version. So say if you want to get by any change set or by any date or by any specific level, you can do all that. You can check out item for editing. You can check it in after making changes. You can view history of any of the specific items and see that who has made what changes and so on and so forth. So these are the options available for source control for any of the items. You can compare versions as well, and you can show pending changes. You can undo pending changes. These are all options you can perform on any of the items by doing a right click. There is another view of these items where you can take any of the projects and go to the Source Control Explorer that is accessible by going to the project menu, and then from there going inside the Source Control Explorer and looking at these options. Those options are all these options about getting latest and all that are available inside Source Control Explorer as well. So let's go ahead and have a look at that. So if you go to this view, here we are showing all the items inside Source Control Explorer, including, you can see this project order processing, and we are looking at this folder move orders, and I see all the items, and I have exactly all the commands available here as well. So this is how you'll be maintaining and managing your items using source control. Now, the next option, that is to use a shared location or the network drive. Let me go ahead and open a project that is set up in that way. So I just opened a project that is on the network drive. So in this case, of course, you don't have source control, and you're working on a shared copy. That means whatever you have open, anybody can open it. So of course, we recommend this only in the scenario when you have small teams and not a whole lot of people are working simultaneously on the same artifacts. So you have to make sure all those things manually. If you look at the versioning, if you look at this data flow, so this is how we recommend that you version your data flows, where you add suffixes to each of them. In this case, I'm just adding 10, 20. You can choose to name it in any other meaningful way, where you can add dates or any other meaningful information that you want to add to the name itself. You can do the same thing with the folders and any other artifacts that you create underneath the project. We recommend that you manually archive and make sure that you are backing up this data periodically so that your work is not lost. So these are the two recommended ways of maintaining. Now we have seen the design and maintenance of Centerprise projects. Now let's look at the benefits. Why should we do that, and what are the key benefits? The key benefits, I'll start with first, that is once we have projects, you can see they're organized so nicely, and you have all your artifacts in one place. It gives you a unified view of your solution. And the best part is that you can keep all the dependent artifacts together. Say if you have a data flow that is dependent on another subflow, and you have workflow that is calling multiple data flows, they're all in one place, and you can have one unified view of all of them in one place. One key benefit is they're easy to port. So if you have one project created for one specific scenario, in this case for customer update, you can take this project and move it to any location. And Centerprise automatically does the relative paths. So if you copy this, this project to a different location, the relative paths of data flows to subflows and workflows, they will be maintained. And if they are not, you can always go and make sure to repair metadata file paths, and that will take care of it. So they go as one unit, and actually you can go ahead and create some what we call archive file that will take care of basically taking your project and creating one unit that can be deployed. Next benefit is that it comes with nice UI shortcuts. So if you have your subflow and you want to use that inside a data flow, so you can create a new data flow and just simply drag and drop your subflow, and that will create your subflow inside the data flow. Same thing goes for your workflows. If you have a workflow and you want to use a data flow inside it, you can simply drag and drop. So, and it is true for all the shareable items, be it subflow, shared actions, shared DB connections, data flows, and so on and so forth. And that gives you a lot of usability lift when it comes to designing and using and reusing reusable parts. So this is about design and maintenance. Let's jump back into the presentation. The next topic is reusability. Any good design demands reusability. You don't want to duplicate your logic. So if you duplicate your logic, it is prone to errors, and it is a maintenance nightmare. So if you have to make a change, you'll have to make a change in multiple places. You may miss out on one, and that will create issues down the line. So that's why for any solution, duplication should be avoided, and we have created a lot of ways to avoid duplication, where you can use reusable artifacts. So what we recommend is you identify and encapsulate reusable parts of the solution early on. And they can be your subflows, shared actions, or shared connections. We also recommend to assign ownership of reusable components based on subject matter expertise. So say, for example, the solution we're looking at about customer updates or order management. So if you have certain areas where you're writing logic about how to process incoming orders, and that is a reusable component, it's possible that in your team someone is an expert in that area. So that person can take over those to create subflows to handle that specific set of logic. And then for other people, they don't need to worry about how they're designed, because they can just take the subflow and for them it will be a black box. So reusability actually and all these artifacts, they help in reusability and modularity, so that it shields other users from details of what other people have done, and they can use the functionality as black boxes. Let's go ahead and have a look at these inside the product. I'm going to open the order processing. And if you look at this project, and actually let's open one of the samples here. This data flow is doing order processing directly, where it is taking orders and making it pass through some filters, some lookups, some calculations, and eventually putting that into the output. If you look at this scenario, of course, this is a very simple scenario, and you may have very complex scenarios. But if you look at the left-hand side, this entire thing can be encapsulated into one black box that can be reused, and the output will be canonical output of this entire area. And that's exactly what we have done using this processor shared item that is a subflow. Here we have taken an input, this database input, and marked it as a subflow input. And then we are using the filter, and we have the lookup, the calculation, and sending it to this canonical output that is subflow output. Now this subflow can be used anywhere inside any other data flow, and it will be processing this entire logic inside one box. Example being, if I go to orders processing, another incarnation, and you can see here it is doing exactly the same thing as this orders processing no subflow, where we have orders and that as the source, and we have a delimited file as the output, and in the middle there's just one box that is subflow, and this subflow is just pointing to the shared processor.sf. So this is how we recommend using subflows, and make sure that the subflows are in their own folder that is a shared folder. Other artifacts that we recommend is shared actions and shared connections. So let's go back to the subflow. In this subflow, you can see that at one point we are doing some calculation, and actually it was same in the original data flow, where we are doing simple calculation, and we are doing just changing the cases from all the cases to uppercase. Simple expression, but still, say if you want to have, if you have multiple of these inside the expression list, and you want to make it as a shared action, you can simply drag and drop this one onto the project, and this makes it as a shared action. So this is what we have done, and we have used that inside our subflow. So this one is not really an expression that is taken from the toolbox. It is actually this cap.sact. So if you go to the properties of this box, you can see that it is just pointing to the shared action. So now that this shared action can be reused across multiple data flows, workflows, subflows, and so on and so forth. So if you want to do the encapsulation at the box or the action level, we can do that using shared actions. Now, last but not the least, and this is, I would say, one of the most important ones, is the shared DB connection. This one is important because in a lot of scenarios, you're handling with connecting to the databases. And when you connect to databases, you will be using a lot of if you go to any of these, let's go ahead and open this data flow. And if you look at the properties here, you can see that you're pointing to a database connection. And if you design multiple data flows and subflows, you'll have to do this. You have to point to a database. And there are two ways. Either you can specify database information, or you can use a shared connection. If you do this, that means basically if you have just one place from which you are pulling all the data or writing all the data into, that can be put at one place. So in this case, what I have done is I have created this shared DB connection. This is nothing but a DB connection item from the toolbox and marked as a shared action. So here we are just pointing to the same database, and this becomes a reusable component. So if I go to my subflow, I just drag and drop this MyDB connection, and this can be used as just one pointer in all the places wherever I want to point to that same DB connection. The biggest benefit of doing this is that when you are moving it from one environment to other. So say, for example, you're moving from QA to production or development to QA. At that point of time, if you want to change the connection, you don't have to go through all the artifacts and all the data flows, workflows, and subflows and change the individual connections. You can change the connection in one place, and that will take care of all the connections. So this becomes a very useful tool when you're designing solutions where you're dealing with database connections. Let's move back to the presentation. And the next topic is the analysis using the lineage. So the goal of the lineage is to find the origin and trace the life cycle of data elements, be it at the field level or the action level or even at the document level inside a project. And project becomes the container or the scope of the lineage for any of these, whether it is for fields or for the actions or for the documents itself. You can view the lineage of a data element as well as the impact of any changes to that element downstream. And that is one of the biggest benefits. You can track lineage of an element and all the different sources and transformations used to derive its value. You can audit the data trail inside the solution, and you can verify the granularity of calculations. Let's have a look at it. So I'm going to open this data flow that we have been looking at. And let's look at the calculations. There are not a whole lot, but if you look at this field, ship name, it has gone through at least 3 boxes. So it is read from this original source, that is a database table, goes through a filter, then goes through some calculations, and then ends up in this destination. So if I want to see that, what is the lineage of this element? How was it calculated? I can click on Show Lineage, and you can see here it shows me the entire life cycle of this element. So it is derived, and so this is where it is found. That is basically inside the output.csv, and name of the field is ship name. It was calculated in the previous step at the expression inside this data flow, and the name of the expression was expression 1. Before that, it went through this filter, and that was for filtering bad data. And before that, it originated from this table, and it gives you the information about where it was exactly. It was in SQL Server, this database, inside this table. So you can see here for this element, we can see the entire history, or actually the entire, I would say, the life cycle of the field, where it has originated, how it has traveled through the solution, and where it has ended. So this is at the element level. So if I go back to our data flow here, you can do that at the field level. And as I said earlier, you can do that with the actions too. So say, for example, I want to check that this output, how is it dependent on other boxes or other actions inside my solution. This case is a very simple where we have a very simple solution where we have only 5 of boxes, but in complex solutions you may have tens or even hundreds of these. In that case, it is very useful to see how this action is dependent on others. So let's go ahead and see a lineage of this box. And if I click on show lineage, you can see it is showing me how this box is calculated. Same thing if I want to do inside the project, and now this is actually very important because this is across the documents and inside the scope of the project. So if you look at this data flow, and if I do that, if I try to show lineage, there is nothing in that, and it doesn't show me because it is not dependent on anything. Whereas if I go to orders processing, this one is dependent on many other things, because if you remember, this orders processing.df was using a shared connection, and that shared connection internally was using this was using a subflow, and this was internally using a shared action and a shared DB connection, and that all reflects in this lineage. So you can see here my orders processing.df is dependent on this subflow, and that subflow is dependent on 2 things. The first one being cap.sact, the shared action, and the DB connection.sact. And also, this data flow is dependent on this DB connection because we have used this inside this data flow as well. So you can see here it gives you a clear picture of how the dependencies work within the scope of this project. And if you have complex projects where you have data flows working on multiple subflows and shared actions and shared DB connections, this is a very useful tool. Let's move back to the presentation. And that brings us to the last item, and that is impact analysis. So impact analysis uses the same feature of the lineage, but the idea is that it provides high-level visibility into a project for generating a cost-benefit analysis before making any important development decisions. So say, for example, if I have the data flow and I'm looking at adding a couple of more columns or deleting some columns or renaming some columns. So by tracking lineage and tracking the impact of that change, we can see that how many actions are going to be affected, how many other data flows and subflows are going to be affected. We can see the scope of the change, and it will give us an idea of what kind of work is required, and it will make sure that the work that we are doing is not impacting our solution in a big way. You can see all the elements that are dependent on an element or an action, verify the impact of any changes made to any kind of metadata, and verify the impact of mapping changes. Let's go ahead and have a look at this inside the product. So I'll go back to our data flow. And if you look at this data flow where we have these columns inside my table, and if I'm planning to rename any of these, so say for example I want to rename the ship name and see how it is going to impact other parts of the solution. I can see lineage, and it will show me the entire life cycle. So I can check all the points where it is being used and how it is impacting. So say if it is being used inside the calculation. Now this is a critical piece. So if it is being used inside the calculation, if I rename it, it is going to impact this one. So that will give us a very clear idea of what all places they need change and how it is going to impact all the calculations and how it is going to end up in the destination. And it is not limited only to the projects and solutions. We have full integration with even database browsers. So for Centerprise users, as you know, Centerprise comes with full database browsing capability where you can connect to the databases and you can see the database tables and their columns and so on and so forth. So say if you're looking at this customers table and you want to see the dependency or the impact analysis of any of the changes in any of these columns. So you can go to the database browser directly, and you can pick any of the items and show lineage, and that will show you the details of how it is being used and where it is being used and what will be the impact of the change inside for this column. So this concludes the impact analysis, and I believe that brings us to our questions and answers. Let's look at the questions. And I see a question here. Does source control work with TFS 2013? Yes, it does. We have added connectivity to 2013, and that is available in Centerprise 6.0. Next question I have here. Do I have to use TFS for source control? No. Centerprise comes with built-in connectivity to TFS, but you can use any source control at your disposal. You can connect to any source controls, but the only thing is that you have to use that source control outside Centerprise. And the benefit of using TFS is that it is built in inside Centerprise, and you have all the commands and all that nice integration with the projects right from inside Centerprise. So you can use the user interface of Centerprise to connect to TFS and use all that functionality. Versus if you're using any other source control, in that case you'll have to do all that outside Centerprise. Any other questions? Yeah, I see another one here. Can I have stuff shared across projects? Very good question. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we have these projects and we recommend that you create independent projects where there is no dependency among different projects. But in some cases, you will have some dependencies. You would want to share some stuff. Let's say if you created some subflow and you want to use it across multiple projects. The way we recommend you design the solution in that scenario is to create folders, and projects can share folders. So what you can do is you can have the same folder shared across multiple projects. So create a structure where all your shared folders are in the same location, create multiple projects, and inside those projects, you can add these shared folders for all those projects. So in that way, these folders will be shared by all the projects, those who want to use it. All right, moving on to the next question. That is, if I move from development to production, do I have to change this in each flow, or is there a global setting somewhere? Good question. Let's go ahead and have a look at the product. So if you look at the project here, there are two ways. The first one is if you want to change, if you are moving it from one place to other place. So you can select the entire project and click on this button that says replace parameter infos. And what it does that it shows you all the distinct connections that you can change. And you can change it to one place and it will change at all the places. However, as I mentioned earlier, we recommend that you have shared database info, so that if you change, if you have that and you're using, like in this case, we have just one shared database info connection, shared DB connection info, and that is being shared across multiple places. You can change it in one location, and that will take care of everything. So that will be preferred way, but you can always use the parameter for replacement to make the changes when you're moving from one environment to other. I see another question. Can you show how you share folders across projects? Definitely. So let's go back to our folder structure here. And in this case, you can see here I have, these are completely disjoint, where I have a customer update and on order processing. Here I have some folders, and here I have some folders. Say, for example, the shared folder I wanted to share between these two. What I will do is I will keep the shared folder outside it. Let's actually create a new folder here, and let's call it shared. And the project files, they have to be at this level. So if I move my project files from inside here one level up and put it here, and do the same thing for other one. So now the scope of both projects is this entire directory structure, and there I can add shared, and I can add customer update to one project, and for the other project I'll add shared and order processing. So you can see here this folder for one project will contain all the subfolders, and for other one it will contain this folder and other subfolders, and another folder for the shared. So in this way, the shared folder is being shared across two different projects. All right. Any other questions? All right. I don't see any other questions. Well, thanks for attending this webinar, and we look forward to see you in the next one. Thank you.